You are on Tips and Streams with your host, Coca.
What's good, everyone? Welcome back to Tips and Streams. I'm Kokan, and I hope you're doing well and feeling locked in wherever you're listening from. All right, let's get to the daily picks. I've got 4 NBA matchups on the card today, so buckle up. We're diving straight into the action. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the Milwaukee Bucks and Atlanta Hawks. When I break down this matchup in Atlanta, I don't see a clean or comfortable game for either side, but I do know a spot where the Hawks make more sense than the market wants to admit. Both teams come into this one sliding, both physically and mentally. Milwaukee has dropped 3 straight and 4 of its last 5, and the body language has been rough. I'm watching a Bucks team that looks heavy, slow, and unsure of itself, especially away from home. The schedule hasn't helped them either. Too much travel, not enough rhythm, and minimal margin for error when things go sideways. Yes, Giannis is still the most dominant presence on the floor. I'll never argue that. He lives in the paint, and nobody in Atlanta can truly neutralize him one-on-one. But basketball isn't a solo act, and that's where Milwaukee keeps running into walls. This team ranks near the bottom of the league in second chance production, struggles at the free throw line, and plays at one of the slowest tempos in the NBA. When they fall behind, they don't have the offensive versatility to flip the script quickly. What concerns me even more is how Milwaukee handles pressure. We just watched them completely unravel in a third quarter recently, and that wasn't a talent issue. That was an identity issue. When Giannis sits or gets crowded, the offense stalls. Too many possessions turn into forced jumpers, and the defensive effort drops when shots don't fall. Atlanta, for all its flaws, plays with more movement and more collective intent. Even without their former franchise guard, this team moves the ball as well as anyone in the league. They lead the NBA in assists, they push the pace, and they're comfortable scoring by committee. That matters against a Milwaukee team that struggles to recover in transition and ranks near a bottom in offensive rebounding. I'm especially encouraged by Atlanta's front court energy. Onyeka Okongwu has taken a real step forward, not just as a scorer, but as a presence around the rim. Jalen Johnson continues to impact games across multiple areas, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker gives them perimeter punch without needing the ball glued to his hands. This Hawks team doesn't rely on one player to save them. They rely on rhythm. Yes, the injury report isn't perfect. Yes, this isn't a dominant home court team. But stylistically, Atlanta is better equipped for this matchup. They play faster, they share the ball, and they don't depend on free throws to score. Against a Milwaukee squad that commits fouls, misses free throws, and struggles to generate extra possessions, that's a real edge. From a betting perspective, trends support it too. Milwaukee has consistently failed to cover in this exact road spot, while Atlanta has responded well after losses in this series. More importantly, the game script favors the Hawks. If they control tempo and force Milwaukee to defend laterally, the Bucks will be uncomfortable all night. So when I put it all together, the pace, the ball movement, the recent form, and the matchup dynamics, I'm backing the Atlanta Hawks to win this game and cover the 1.5 point spread. It won't be pretty. It won't be easy, but I trust Atlanta's collective game more than Milwaukee's reliance on one superstar right now. My money is on the Hawks to take care of business at home. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Indiana Pacers and Philadelphia 76ers. When I break this matchup down piece by piece, I see 2 teams moving in completely different directions. And for me, this game comes down to control, discipline, and matchup pressure more than raw talent alone. Philadelphia comes into this spot needing a response. I watched that collapse against Cleveland closely, and what stood out to me wasn't just the late-game execution, but how much urgency this group showed before things unraveled. When the Sixers are locked in defensively and pushing the tempo selectively, they dictate the flow of the game, especially in their own building. That second quarter dominance has become a real identity for this team, and I expect them to lean heavily into that rhythm again here. From my perspective, Tyrese Maxey is the engine that changes everything. His pace in transition, his confidence attacking space, and his ability to punish slow rotations create constant stress on defenses. Add in VJ Edgecombe's activity on both ends, and suddenly this Philadelphia team looks far more balanced than the box score sometimes shows. Even with Joel Embiid managing his game differently than in past seasons, his presence alone bends coverages and opens the floor in ways Indiana simply struggles to handle. On the other side, Indiana is clearly fighting uphill. I don't ignore the effort. I respect teams that keep competing, but the structure just isn't there right now. This offense has had serious trouble converting clean looks, and when shots aren't falling early, things tend to spiral. Watching that blowout loss recently told me a lot about how fragile this group can be once the game speed increases. Asking them to survive long stretches on the road against a disciplined home team is a tall order. Yes, Indiana has covered numbers in tricky spots before, but context matters. This version of the Pacers is missing key creators, and that forces too much responsibility onto Pascal Siakam. I like his game, but asking him to carry scoring, rebounding, and emotional leadership all at once against a locked-in Philadelphia defense is asking a lot. The Sixers thrive when opponents rely on isolation-heavy offense, and that's exactly where Indiana ends up far too often. From my angle, this game swings early. I expect Philadelphia to establish control before halftime, stretch the margin with defensive stops, and manage the fourth quarter with patience instead of panic. This isn't about chasing style points. It's about sending a message after back-to-back losses. I'm riding with Philadelphia to win this game and cover the 7.5-point spread. I trust their structure, I trust their home rhythm, and I trust their leaders to close this one the right way. My money is on the 76ers to take care of business and remind everyone why this team is still a real factor in the East. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Boston Celtics and Detroit Pistons. When I sit down and really break this matchup apart, this feels like one of those games where context matters more than surface results. Yes, Boston comes in playing solid basketball, and yes, they've handled business lately. I'm not denying that. But for me, this game is less about what Boston has done recently and much more about where they're walking into tonight. Detroit at home right now is not just good, it's imposing. I've watched this Pistons group grow into a team that understands how to control tempo, protect the paint, and apply pressure without forcing things. They don't rush possessions, they don't hunt highlights, and they don't rely on one player to bail them out late. Everything they do feels deliberate, especially on their own floor. What stands out to me most is how Detroit wins games without needing explosive scoring nights. That blowout against Indiana wasn't about someone dropping a monster number. It was about defensive discipline, early physicality, and shutting the door before halftime. When a team can dominate like that while resting starters early, that tells me their system is working exactly as intended. Now flip it to Boston. I respect the resilience. I respect how they've stayed competitive despite missing a key piece. Jaylen Brown has been carrying the scoring load with confidence, and when Boston finds rhythm early, they can bury teams quickly. But I still see some cracks when they step up in competition, especially late in road trips. This is the toughest test of that stretch, and for me, that matters. Boston's wins away from home have come against teams that don't consistently punish mistakes. Detroit does. The Pistons thrive on forcing uncomfortable possessions. They contest everything at the rim, they collapse quickly, and they make you earn points instead of gifting them. That plays directly into Detroit's strengths and pulls Boston out of its comfort zone. Head-to-head this season tells a very specific story to me. These games stay tight, but Detroit consistently finds answers when it matters most. They've already proven they can beat Boston in multiple environments, and I trust that confidence carries over here. I'm not expecting a blowout. This feels like a grind, a game where every possession has weight, where defensive stops swing momentum, and where patience decides the outcome. And when it comes down to that final stretch, I trust Detroit's balance, health, and home presence more. My final pick is the Pistons to win this game and cover the 2-point spread against the Celtics. I'm riding with Detroit at home. Today's last prediction is for the game between the Miami Heat and Golden State Warriors. When I sit down and break this matchup apart, the first thing that jumps out to me is context. Not just who's playing well, but where and under what circumstances. And for me, this spot clearly favors Golden State. The Warriors are deep into a long homestand, and I always pay attention to that. Teams that sleep in their own beds, keep their routines tight, and don't have to deal with airports tend to play freer basketball. I've watched this group slowly build momentum over the past couple of weeks, and what I like most is not just the wins, but how they're coming. They're separating from teams, controlling tempo, and putting games away before the fourth quarter turns into chaos. What really sells me is the margin of victory. Golden State hasn't been squeaking by. They've been stepping on the gas, stretching leads, and forcing opponents into uncomfortable shots late in the clock. That tells me the offense is flowing and the defense is connected. When those two things align, this team is extremely difficult to slow down in this building. Miami, on the other hand, walks into a very different situation. I respect the Heat, always have. They're disciplined, physical, and rarely beat themselves. Their win over Oklahoma City was impressive, no doubt about it. Dan Adebayo was dominant. The ball moved, and they stayed composed late. But from my experience, this feels like a classic emotional peak followed by a brutal scheduling spot. This is the start of a long West Coast trip. New arena, new rims, different time zone, different rhythm. That matters, especially against a Warriors team that's already in a groove. I've seen this movie many times. A tough, hard-fought win back home, followed by travel, fatigue, and just enough slippage to fall behind early. Matchup-wise, Golden State has the exact profile that stresses Miami. The Warriors live beyond the arc. They shoot with confidence, and they don't rely on one guy to carry the scoring load. I love how many different players can step up on any given night. That kind of balance forces defensive breakdowns, and Miami can't afford slow rotations in this building. I also trust Golden State's defensive structure more right now. They've been sharper at the point of attack, more disciplined in transition, and much better at turning stops into quick offense. When they get rolling, the crowd feeds into it, and that chase center energy becomes a real factor. From my perspective, this game comes down to rhythm and legs. Golden State has both. Miami is still searching for consistency, especially away from home. I don't see the Heat playing poorly, but I do see moments where Golden State creates separation. A run here, a burst of shooting there, and suddenly the math becomes difficult. So when I put everything together, form, location, momentum, and matchup, my read is clear. I'm riding with the Warriors to win this game and cover the 3-point spread against the Heat. This feels like their night, their floor, and their tempo, and I'm trusting that edge.